Casting with Ceri Jones.
This week's guest played a big part in me getting into the fly fishing competition scene as a youngster. I actually thought of him as almost a Gareth Edwards of fly fishing at the time. A Welsh International with countless caps and a love for the traditional wet fly Loughstyle methods and bank fishing for wild browns of the mid Wales reservoirs. He tells us how he started fishing when he was a small boy in the South Wales valleys and gives us some funny stories along the way. He is also president of the Welsh Salmon Trout Association. Today he is nearing his 80th birthday and is now retired from his work and tackle shop business. He also talks of the great sadness and loss of his son Paul back in August, who was also a great fly fisherman. Welcome to my chat with Cliff Harvey. Hello Cliff, how are you?
I just fed the dogs. I got two little terriers, you see.
Have you?
One is 15. The other one is 13. They're brothers. Same father, same mother. One's taken after the mother, and one takes after the father. The father and my oldest dog, the 15-year-old, if you've seen them, you'd think they were twins. Of course, the father's dead now.
Yeah.
But he was the spit of his old man, and the little one was the spit of his mother, a white bitch. He's black and white, and the other one is brown and white. Julian Richards' dog it was that I had him from.
I haven't seen him for,
Yeah, he got a little shop in Pontypridd down where the old rediffusion place used to be on the hill. We called it the Corn Stores Hill in the old days, and he's in the back by there behind the Corn Stores building with the diffusion and the school. He's in the back, but there he is.
Do you know what? The one memory I've got from you years ago, what stands out, is your hat. Every time we used to see you fishing, you had this tweed a ghillie hat, and it was covered with flies and your medals.
Do you know I've had 3 hats since the one you...
Have you?
Since you remember the one...
Yeah.
Don't forget now, my medals were in my original hat.
Yes.
Well, I've got 3 of them, the one I wear today, and 2 I've worn out in between. Another hat I was wearing pre-1974. Because my first international badge is 1974, Lake Menteith and Trout Fynnydd.
1974. So you got 3 hats altogether full of medals, no?
No, only the one. I never put them in the other one.
Oh. Jesus. There must be some weight on that hat, though.
It is. You couldn't blow off your head. Mock used to give me a row all the time. But it was so heavy, well, I'd have to weigh it. I reckon it weighs £1.5, £2. Oh, aye. Yeah, they got all the country badges as well, see?
Yeah. Yeah, I got a couple.
You know, we've got the Towie Angling Club and Centenary and...
Used to swap them years ago with other countries.
Valley, yeah, all the country badges. And some of those country badges, when we went there, we used to have we'd have club badges as well if we had any stubblers in our hats, and we used to give up to the boys then, and they'd give us their country, their badge, like.
Yeah. I've got a few in mine, not half as much as yours, but I was sorting out the attic the other day through lockdown. You do, don't you? You think of something to do,
yeah.
and I had this box up there. And years ago, it'd either be like a deer stalker or a ghillie hat. And I had a ghillie hat. And you had a ghillie hat as well. It's like a wider brim, innit? It's not the flaps one.
Yeah. I did have a ghillie, but I never wore it. Well, these are ghillie hats.
Yeah.
They're not, they got a peak front, peak back.
Oh, you had one of those? Right.
Peak in the front and peak in the back. Not the deer stalker, where you had earmuffs which tied on top.
That's it.
They had two earmuffs, and then you could tie the thing to the top, and if it was very cold, you could pull them down onto your ears and tie it under your chin.
Yeah.
That's the deer stalker. The other one's the gilly. That's the one I do wear. Those
are the days. And then we all used to have barbers, didn't we?
Yeah, always had barbers. I haven't got a barbers now, but I've got a fishing jacket, which I had when I had the shop, and I think that was 19. No, it was after that. It was 2009.
Is it?
And that's the coat I wear today. That's right, and it's from Leader, and I just spray it with the stuff that you put on your bloody coat, waterproof, and then use it on tents as well.
Yeah. I used to have a Solway zipper, which was the barber.
I had one. That was the barber. I had the Solway zipper as well. Hood on it as well.
That's it. Detachable
and
hood.
You had quite a thick corduroy collar on it.
Yeah. Yeah. You could put lining in them as well, couldn't you? I never had the lining.
Yes, you could zip out the lining and put another one in.
Yeah. Always come to my mind. I remember one day I came home. I'm not sure I came from, I don't know if I wouldn't have been school. I'd left school. But then I said, where's my barber? I was still living at home. My mother said, I threw it out. You're not wearing that thing anymore. And I thought, oh my God. Because it wasn't waterproof anymore, but it looked, it was torn here and there, but it looked the part. And that's what you wanted. You didn't want it to look all brand new.
No, you didn't want to be a posh person when you're flipping through the undergrowth. Daisy, you could buy a tin.
I did.
And it was a white paste. It was barber waterproofing. You could buy the tin.
Yeah.
And you had to put your Solway zipper or whatever one you had. You could put it on something which was hot, like a radiator or something you could warm it up. And the part you're warming, you get your cloth, dip it in the tin of like brie cream, white like cream. But it was quite hard. And you warm the rag, dip it in, and then you'd rub the part of the coat that you was warming up. You'd rub it on that.
Yeah.
And the best place to put it, of course, was on the neck and the shoulders.
Yeah.
But I always had barber compound. Always.
Yeah. What I did, a mistake, I did exactly what you did. You heat the tin up, and then, the mistake I did, I brushed it all on then, right? So I brushed it all on and left it overnight. The following morning, you could have stood it up on its own. The wax had gone hard. I hadn't rubbed it in.
That's right, but don't worry about that, see? But you gotta rub it in. You gotta rub it in, and it won't be as bad as that then.
Yeah.
But I can remember my barber standing up before I put it together, before I do the job.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing with the barbers.
And you know what? I used to work for a short time, couple of years, there was a tackle shop in Cardiff called Arthur Bale and Sons. And I remember we used to sell barbers there. And this guy came in, right, and he bought this barber. And I said, are you going fishing now, are you, or shooting? And he said, no, he's going straight up the forestry. He said, because he doesn't like the idea of the barber looking like a Chelsea sort of person, just going around doing his shopping. He tied the barber around to the tow bar and drove around the forestry to rough it up. Well. Yeah. So how did it all start for you then? How did you start fishing and where?
When I was a little boy, my father used to take me fishing. My mother used to play hell because the fish we used to go after was eels. And I'm talking now about in the war and after the war. Now I was born in 1941. The war had only been going 2 years.
Oh yeah.
And we used to go down in Ridvell, and where I lived in Treforest. I was at the other end of the old tin plate plant. It's a tin works in Ridvell, but it's only about 3/4 of a mile away from Meadow Street where I lived.
Yeah.
And it had separate waterways in it, which the water came up to the feeder behind, over the bridge, and over the wheels, and turned the big working wheels of the mills. There were 7 mills in there.
Was there?
Now, the bottom mill, the waterway had broken away down inside the plant, and eels used to come up the river and up the feeder and go in this hole under the mill, where the mill water was still running down, but you could climb down and fish in the pool inside the building in the night, in the dark.
Wow.
And that's where I started catching eels with my dad.
Wow.
And I was like 5, 6.
How would you catch them then?
With a worm or dead minnow.
Oh.
That's the only 2 baits we ever used for them then. With the minnow, you had to wait a bit longer because the mouths weren't that big.
Yeah.
But with a worm, as soon as you bite the worm, you could strike him and get him out, because you could have him in the jaw.
What?
But we used to take those home, and we wouldn't kill thousands, but we wouldn't put all the little ones were going back, up to about a foot long. But anything of any size, we would take home for food. And then as I grew, he said, right, you can go down the brook that feeds that. A part of the brook that feeds it is still running today down from the University of Glamorgan. There's a stream coming down under the bridges there.
Right.
And that stream is the very stream that went down through the back of the tin crate plant, and also another one that came down what we call the Devil's Bridge, which is just out Lantwid Road, beyond the Lantwid Road end. There's a stream that came down into the river there from the farm up on the top. Right. And that was the water that ran, well, it didn't run at all, but the Treforest waterfall had a feeder on the west bank, and that feeder went down Long Row, behind Raymond Terrace, through a tunnel to the tin plate plant, where both streams helped it as well, like.
And were there trout in them?
Yeah, that's where I caught my first lot of trout. My father was always with me when we pulled a couple out. And again, because it was the war and was on, we used to put a line down. It would be a twine line with about a foot of nylon, which you couldn't afford. It wasn't nylon then, it was catgut.
I heard about that.
And we'd have about a foot of catgut and a hook. And the hook was always a size 10, what we call the size 10 eel hook. They were black Japan, they were. Right. And we'd put worms on them, and we'd set them as we were going down the brook behind the old Brook Railway there. And we'd set them going all the way down, and we'd check 1 or 2 when we come back up to see if there was anything on them. If there weren't anything on them, we'd leave them for the night and pick them up in the morning. And we used to catch trout like that with a set line. Wow. Again, you're talking about 1943, 44, 45 on.
Yeah.
And I can remember catching my first trout on my own on a rod. And that was beyond the tin plate plant, where the water came down and done the job over the mill. The runoff water went down through a place we used to call the Dicky Woods.
Yeah.
It used to come into the River Taff down behind Steinberg's on the west bank, where I used to go down there for a walk. There was quite a big pool in one part of it, and there was always a shoal of roach in it. And I can remember seeing one huge trout in there. Wow. In fact, there's quite a few big trout caught in those days by the boys in the Dvelen. You had 3 or 4 pounders, like.
How big is that?
I can remember... in them days, of course, you only had to get your rod license, and that was it. Right. And there was very few places which wouldn't allow you to fish, because that was the time, that was the way it was. Yeah. And we didn't have clubs saying, boom, boom, and you can't come in here and you can't go in there. And I can remember having my worm. I can remember putting it in where this pool ran out and back into a bit of a stream. And as my worm was coming down, I was on a high bank about 5 feet off the water. Yeah. With my rod, and I can remember the worm was rolling down past this spready rock, I seen the trout come out from under the stone, grab my worm and take it under the stone.
Wow.
So I give him a few seconds and I whacked him and I had him out. And I ran all the way home. That's got to be about a mile and a half. I ran all the way home with a bloody fish still on the hook until I got into the house to show my father. And I would say at that time, believe it or not, I wouldn't have been more than about 8. I wouldn't have been more than 8. So you're talking about 1949, look.
Yeah.
But see, I used to go up the mountain with the boys. We have a little bloody bottle, some water, a couple of sandwiches, and we'd go up on the top of the Barry Mountain when we were 8, 9, 10.
Jeez.
You can't do that today. The kids would get bloody grabbed and they'd be taken away. But in those days, I can remember being on top of the Barry Mountain because my mother, she'd say, right, they've been out an hour and a half, and she'd go out onto the doorstep, and we could see her on and we'd be waving off the top of the bloody mountain, and my mother would be on the doorstep waving back. That's the days.
Yeah.
But when we used to go fishing in the night for eels, and we were coming home, especially in May, because the eels run early in the year, so it's one of the first fish.
All right.
And when we'd be coming back up the old feeder road from the Tin Plate to Treforest to Meadow Street, there was only about 3 gas lights on a road that run alongside the hayfield, the meadow field it was.
Gas lights.
And as we approached these lamps, you could see the big maybugs flying about like.
Wow.
Of course, our rods used to be in the bag. We used to play cricket with these many maybugs if you could hit them. But you were too hard to hit.
Wow.
Memories, boy.
I know. It's good to have them, isn't it?
Well, like I said, in a couple of weeks' time, I'm 80, and I can still remember the days when I was very, very young. My father had an armchair in the kitchen one side, and my mother had an ordinary chair the other side of the fire, big hob oven. I can remember crawling through the rungs of my father's chair.
That's some time.
What do you think of that?
So where was that? Was that in Claerwen, is?
That's in Meadow Street, that is. Down by the old trolley bus terminus.
Yeah. Do you know one of the earliest memories I got when I was small? Everyone used to have coal fires then. And I used to get up in the morning, or say, I used to get up in the middle of the night, and you go downstairs, go to the toilet or something, like, and then.
Yes.
Or if you're first up, you go downstairs, and you'd see what's called black pats, and they were running behind the fire. Then as soon as you put the light on, behind the fire, like big cockroaches.
They run undercover.
Yeah.
We cottoned on to black pats very early down home. We had black pats as well, but we did eliminate them for a long time. What it was in the old days when they used to paper the walls, because nearly all the walls had paper on them.
Yeah.
So they used to mix a paste with flour and water.
That's right.
And then they'd put the paper on the wall. Well, the black pats would go between the paper and the wall, and they'd live on that paste.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's a fact. But in the end, they cottoned on, and they brought out a gel then, which had stuff in it, which the black pats would die if they had it. Yeah. And that's practically the way that the black pats were eliminated. They'd be in the ceiling as well. If you papered the ceiling, they'd be up there as well.
Is there? Because they came they came in the sacks, didn't they, with the coal, I think.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. But how they got to the quantities, I don't know, because I can remember when I was in Steinberg and I started work. Now you're talking now. I was born in 41. I started work when I was 15. I finished school on a Friday, started work on a Monday. Now then, 15, that would be 1956, I started work, look. Now I can remember being on, they decided they needed a fire team within the plant. Well, I was like 18 and 19 now. And there was 6 of us picked from around the factory, from 6 different departments where it's logic to do. If a fire broke out, then the person concerned would know what action he needed to take.
Right.
And in the night, when everybody'd gone home, one night, we done an inspection of the kitchen. And we all of us, about five of us, it was, plus the man was a fire officer from Porth.
Oh, yeah.
And he worked in the dispatch. They had a part-time fire station in Porth, over the bridge, and then when you turn, it was on the right-hand side.
That was the bottom of North Road. That's the bottom of my street, that was.
Well, there we are. The man who ran that station, part-time service, he worked in our dispatch, and I'm trying to think of his name. He's a lovely, lovely gentleman, he was.
Yeah.
And when we walked into the kitchen, he put the light on, and just the floor was just black pats. I've never seen as many in my whole life. But you didn't see one in the day.
No, they don't do.
Yeah, everybody had black pats,
Yeah.
but they did get exterminated, I think, when they cottoned on to doing the wallpaper. Everybody had leatherettes and wallpaper on their walls. Everybody did.
Yeah.
And like you said, you come down in the night because the toilet was down the bottom of the back.
Yeah.
We didn't have toilets in house. We didn't have bathrooms. We had the old bathtub out the back, and you bring it in and put it in front of the fire.
We got it easy now, haven't we?
Easy, we're all bloody softies now.
I know. You got a radiator right beside you now, sitting down, you can read the paper. How did the fly fishing start then?
Well, I used to go, I can remember catching my first fish on a fly, and I can remember catching my first fish on a minnow.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But I used to be in the Pontypridd Angling Club.
Right.
So they had a stretch of water on the Ascot Brecon, and they had it for years. Now, the park in Brecon was maintained, and all the trees along the river, even though Pontypridd owned the fishing rights, they were always trimmed and kept nice, short and down.
Yeah.
And you could fish all the way. We had about 5 fields. And I was up there this one year with a boy from Meadow Street with me, Johnny Thomas. He liked fishing as well. And I must have been I couldn't have been more than 14, 15. And I asked my mother if I could go to Brecon, but we wanted to stay the night. So we checked when we went up if we could stay the night in this place. It was a transport cafe just before you go over the bridge in Brecon on the left. Big, huge building. And they were on, well, as long as there's two of you and you stay together all the time, you can go. So me and Johnny Thomas went up. We stayed overnight and all. We fished the day, didn't have a lot of luck. And then we stayed the night and fished the following day and come home on the bus to Merthyr. And from Merthyr then down to Treforest on the train.
Wow.
And that one weekend we were up there, I seen these fellas come along with a green heart rod, and all he done was he didn't pull nothing off the water, didn't pull nothing off the reel. He just had a length of line out, enough for him to cast quite tidily, and he put it across the river, held his rod fairly high, and fed the line down and around. And then he'd whip it up again and do the same again, moving down the river. Boy, was he pulling some bloody fish out. And I said, you got to do that.
Yeah.
And I started fishing the fly. And you know the university now in Treforest?
Yes.
Well, there's a road which, on the bottom end of it, southern end of the university, there's a road that goes up, and it used to be the old Barry railway line.
Right.
And the old Barry railway line there, see, David Davis from Llandinam, the monument you see when you go north.
Yes, I know.
He was the man who was the engineer on that Barry Line Railway. And under the bridge then, the road split. One was going up the mountain and one was going along the mountain. Well, down to the right by there was an overflow from the water going down into the college. There's a stream there. And there was overflow there, and there was a couple of trout in this pond. And I was sitting there in the night, and I had this so-called fly rod.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there in the early evening, and this fish was coming up from under a log. and taking a fly off a top every so often. So I done my best to get my fly out to where he was coming up by, and truly enough, up he come and took my fly, and I struck him, and that's the first trout I ever caught on a fly. And I was in an overflow pool from the little stream, the same stream that comes off the mountain, down past the university, under the railway, and down to the tin plate plant.
Is that still there now?
Yes, it is still there today. Yeah, the thing is today they put a bloody refuge tip up behind the university, way up, and they did have problems with the leaching out of the tip. So I know we went on to them when I was with the Ospreys, and then we tried to get it sorted then because we didn't want it going in the river.
Yeah.
My first fish on a minnow was on Shunny's Pond, which again come under the local Pontypridd District Angling Club. And I went up in Shunny's, and I always fish for Shunny's, and now because I was good with the fly, I thought, right, I'm good. I know what to do with this bloody fly. And I started fishing with a fly on a part of the lake on the other side, not the roadside, or the path side, I should say. And I started catching fish up in Shunnies on the fly. Now and then I'd have two, and I was getting better and better. And I used to get my flies. Do you know Pontypridd very well?
Reasonable, yeah.
You know the very top of town, where you got to go over the bridge past the Maltsters pub.
Yes.
Well, if you come the other way past the Maltsters, over the bridge, and then you turn down to go down Taft Street.
Yeah.
Well, that end shop on the right-hand side was Gould's. It was a cycle shop, but he sold trout flies and a couple of fishing rods and lines and reels. And I used to buy my flies in there.
What about, was gear hard to come by then? The fly reels?
No. In fact, I'll tell you another story in a minute, but I bought my flies in there, and I can remember the best ones was a moth, a black gnat, the cockabondi, which was a beetle, and I was using just a handful of flies up on Shunny's Pond on the Graig, and that's what I taught myself how to catch. And one day on the other side, on the path side, which was quite deep, very deep, I put up a live minnow over there and on a float.
Oh, yeah.
And I took my first trout on a minnow, first time ever.
Wow.
But I knew I had to give him a chance to get it in his mouth.
Yeah. So was Pontypridd Club then, that's different to the Ospreys, wasn't it? Ospreys was formed later, was it?
Oh, yeah, much later, yeah. And Ponty Angling Club, they took, what you got to realise, Ponty Angling Club was getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And what's his name from Hopkins down up there, he was keeping it going. And eventually they had permission through the clubs. I remember the last of the old gentlemen dying from Hawthorne, and Ponty Angling Club went into Ospreys. So Ospreys then, the water in Brecon technically is the fishing rights belongs to Ponty Club, which is now Osprey.
Right.
Got it?
Yeah.
There was two
Mr.
brothers.
Owen.
One was called Bungalow and his brother.
Oh, Gary and Ian.
Gary and Ian, yeah. Not them, the other one. Nice boy. Real nice boy.
All right. Rumble.
He was the tail end Charlie with Ponty. And I can remember having my ticket. I always bought a Ponty ticket. And I remember the old fella coming up and saying, Cliff, there's nobody else now, only me. Mark Rundle,
yeah.
Yeah, I got him, boy.
Yeah. Oh, he was in the Ponty Club.
Yeah, they were coming on the scene then, boys were then saying, me, I'm going off the bloody scene now.
Yeah, because I must have been, well, let me think now, 20, in the early 80s I joined the Ospreys when, we used to have meetings then above Lloyd's Bank in Pontypridd.
That's right, in Ponty, that's right.
And then we went up to Abercanon then, they bought that church, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right. We originally, we were in and it's a bull.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Originally, we started with Gareth Thomas,
Yeah. He was
who was a teacher, and he wanted to get a fly tying class going in a bull. And we were up there in the New Road School. When you're going up into the bull, it's uphill, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Go up the New Road, and they go uphill, and it was to the left uphill. When you're going up that hill, 3/4 up it to the left, there was a little school, New Road School there.
Yeah.
So Gareth and us, we all went there. I used to come down from Pentrabach then. Derek would be there. I'd be there. In fact, there would be about 12 to 14 in the fly tying class. 2 or 3 old boys from the bull were there.
Because he used...
And that's where we made the fishing club ospreys. That's where it started, in that fly tying class. They moved from there to the pub, to the Robert Town.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we ended up going up to the Robert Town pub opposite the fish shop there.
I know it.
And that's when the Ospreys was formed.
Gareth was my headmaster in school.
You were head in school.
Yeah.
That's right, deputy head he was. But I think you'll find the first chairman, I think, was Derek Thorne. I can't really remember too much of it, how we were like. But I didn't particularly want to get tied up anywhere in it. I can remember buying, when I decided now I'm catching these bloody fish on a coarse rod with a soft top, I decided to buy a fly rod. And because of where I was fishing, it didn't need to be long. It needed to be short. So I bought a 7-foot fly rod, and a Ceri Tudor lightweight it was. And I was doing the papers when I was in school, and my father and mother allowed me to have this on the hire purchase, and I used to send a postal order to the company with a little book every month. And the rod was about £14. And I used to send this booklet and the money, the postal order, to them every month. They'd mark it in the book, and then they'd send the book back to me.
I hope you still got it.
I do believe I still got that rod here somewhere, yes.
Oh, yeah. That's good, isn't it?
And that was a 7-foot Ceri Tudor lightweight.
I remember the
very,
name.
very, very. And when you had half a pound trout on it, boy, you had half a pound trout. You knew he was on there.
Yeah.
There we are, some memory, Phil, look.
I know. And
even the bloody rod length was 7 feet, and I knew that, and I know the name of the rod. I'm pretty certain it's yours somewhere.
I used to remember, I had fond memories of having the fly tying classes in the Lloyd's Bank above. It was like almost like an attic area, wasn't it? It was like a bit up on the top.
Right, yeah, we were.
And it was always on a Wednesday, and it was funny.
Right.
There was like, best way to describe it, was like a window on the roof, and we'd open that, and you'd hear Sardis Road. They'd always have a game on, and you'd hear the rugby as your time flies.
Hear the rugby, yeah.
Yeah.
That's quite right. You're right enough. Eventually, you see, the bank in the end, see, they needed to use that room we were in. And we had to get out, look.
Yeah.
And that's how they bought the Osprey Club. We put in for a grant through the... To get a grant to buy it, and we had to pay the grant back and to get the Osprey Club out.
Yeah, that little chapel and car park. That's worth a few quid, no?
Yeah. Well, I bought this. Where I'm living was the cottage by the side of a chapel, and the chapel went back behind, and off the back side of the chapel was a Sunday school with big tall fold-up doors, glass doors.
Oh yeah.
Last time in here, this house was built between 1840, I think, and about 1845.
Wow, some history there, then, isn't it?
Brilliant. Well, the walls are 2 feet thick, yeah.
Yeah.
My window sills out the front are only 22 inches off the ground.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's how I mean, I can stand up and my head's only bloody 8 inches short of the ceiling.
That's nice.
And Paul would duck in going through out of the living room into the kitchen. Paul would be ducking his head.
I like houses with characters like that.
Oh, yeah.
So how did your competition fishing start?
Well, all through the Ospreys. The Ospreys really started the competitions. They said, right, we're a fishing club, and they started doing competitions. And you started getting involved there too.
Yeah.
That's where you started. You was, I do believe.
I did, yeah.
In those days, you had a representative for Worcester in about 8 parts of Wales.
Yeah.
And they'd meet perhaps twice a year because it was only tournament fishing, international fishing. So they didn't have to meet all the time. And that's how it was. You had a rep, and Glyn Jenkins was our rep. There was a rep in Cardiff I knew, and I knew a rep in Newport. And like that, around made up Worcester. And they were solely an association taking on the English, Irish and Scots. I joined Mountain Ash, but when I got into the team and they took a photo of me, I put it down in the Osprey room because that's where I started. And that's still on the wall, I think. There. I don't know. I haven't been in the Ospreys for, 8 years, 10 years. I first qualified to fish Lake of Menteith in Scotland. I qualified in 1973 and I fished in 1974. And that year was the last year where we had the old system where you had the international was the spring international and the autumn was a friendly, but you still had a medal. This is where it's a bit of a no-goer because I fished the very last one of them. I fished in Menteith with a gentleman from Aberystwyth, 2 brothers, one was bald, and again, I'm lacking names. I can't remember his name, and I feel I knew him. We used to call his brother Curly, and he was bald as a bladder lad. He didn't have a hair in his head, but we used to call him Curly. Now, anyway, his brother is the one I fished with in Menteith.
Yeah.
And he caught a fish when he was really bloody fast asleep. He didn't know what they were going on in long a wee bed. And that was my first international in Menteith.
Wow.
And then we fished trout funny then in the autumn as the other one. But you've still got your medal, although it was classed as a friendly.
Friendly, yeah. Because I remember then, to fish for the team in the early days, there was far more people competing to fish for the team. And you
and Matey would be in the trial.
Yeah. When I started the competition fishing with the Ospreys, it was in the sort of the mid-'80s. And you'd have to qualify for the trials, you'd have to fish your own club competition first to get in the top 6.
That's quite right.
And then you get the opportunity then to fish the first trial.
Yeah.
And you had to come in the top 20, I think. And then you go into the final trial.
You're right enough. You had to do, you're quite right. It was 6 from the club. That's when the rules come in. So I think you'll find that they made those rules so they wouldn't get just anybody in the trials.
Yeah.
They wanted people in the trials who were able to successfully fish the trial kind of thing.
Yeah.
And be efficient like.
Yeah.
But it was sometimes difficult in Ospreys to get in that top 6.
Yeah.
You had to be in the top 6 of the Ospreys and they'd enter you. You're quite right there. That's absolutely correct.
And another thing I remember as well, because, we would in the Ospreys, I'd be well into the competitions and I did well. But the first time then, I did a boat competition. It was the regional boat championships it was. And it was in Llandeg and I was drawn with you. And I thought, I got this made now. And we actually did. We won it. Not only did we win it, I think we finished by about 12 o'clock. And then...
packed up, we had a limit.
Yeah. And that was it. That was 6 fish. And then you stopped. It's not like now. You point to this. But I still got the tankard now.
There we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I won the competition there off the bank. I didn't want to fish the boat, and it was a competition. I can't recall who the organisers were, but Gareth Edwards was there, and it ended up I won it. So
Did you?
he presented me with a book, which I got in my library up there now.
On rugby?
Trout Fly Fishing by J.R. Hartley.
I thought you were going to say it.
Can you remember that?
Yeah.
J.R. Hartley. And it wasn't about bloody fishing at all. J.R. Hartley was a bloody advert on the television, it was.
That's right.
I won that. He gave me that on the day, and he wrote in it then to Cliff from Gareth, because I fished with Gareth Edwards 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And the prize was a weekend away in a country estate up in Midlands. And my missus played out because I took Paul. Paul was only young. Paul would cast a rod. Like he's about 10, he was.
Yeah.
I took Paul and we went up and he bloody hammered down on the night. But we went out on the lake in the morning and there was ducks on the lake. There was deer in the bloody wood and the shotguns were going and the ducks were coming down. And
yeah.
I'm not sure which estate it was. I'm not quite. I'd have to get my book out and have a look. It was up between Birmingham and Coventry, up there somewhere it was.
I've met him a couple of times, Gareth Edwards. I never fished with him. In fact, I was at a dinner a long time ago in the Cliff Ice Hotel and he was sitting next to me. That was a while back.
Yeah.
Something to do with Welsh water, that was then. He's a good fisherman, isn't he?
He went on as a fishing kind of a fishing director, didn't he, with the Welsh Water Board?
Yeah.
I fished with him about 4 times.
Wow.
But all he done in the boat, if he didn't get fish straight away, he'd put his feet up on the seat.
Is it?
And he'd drink my bloody coffee.
So do you fish much these days then?
Well, we've been in lockdown since a year now. Last March
was
lockdown, wasn't it?
I
was still fishing in the autumn.
Right.
I love the Elan Valley and that. I love the Elan. I don't go around these small ponds. I might have to eventually. I like Calabont. Astrevesta used to be good, but it's a bit far out for me now. But I could still make Calabont.
So when you actually got made redundant from your work, did you think, right, now's the opportunity, I want to open a tackle shop?
When they finished me off, I come home and I had about, 5, 6, 7 weeks. I was thinking of going cold fish, get myself a van and go around selling fish, cold fish from the market, go down to Cardiff, get the cold fish.
Yeah.
There was a few things I looked at, and then I thought, well, perhaps I can find a place I can put a shop in, like a store. As long as you produce and make things, you could go in the starter units. I was able to go over there and learn because I said, well, I'm going to make flies, I'm going to make weights, I'm going to make rods, and because I was going to make, I said I might have a room then when people can come and see, they might even be able to buy.
Yeah.
Well, the lady in question didn't stop me whatsoever in what I told her, and I was able to do what I'd done. Since then, they've opened up a lot of those units, the same as what I was one of the first in Kill, and I was selling from the units. Now there's quite a number of them that sell from the units. Oh, yeah, that's the number 10. That was the shop. And I spent quite a few grand putting stock in it, building the shelves and the stands. And 1991, I think I had the shop. 1991 is when I opened the shop on the Albion.
Was it?
And I said when I got to, I was 70 when I said I'm retiring. No, I'd gone past bloody 65 by 5 years.
Yeah.
So I said I'm going to retire when I'm 70, and I started downloading the shop. And Gareth, my boy, turned round with an accountant and come down. He said, "Dad, I want to buy the shop." So then Gareth bought it off me. But don't forget now, Gareth's a very, very wealthy young man.
Right.
I mean, very wealthy. And I know at one time there he had like 170 grams of the kit in the shop.
Yeah.
But he didn't go in them a 10. He went 2 down from me. You know, like she is room with like the letter L. Well, I only had the small corner of a letter L. Got me?
Yeah.
So he had he had 3 times the room I had. I had 500 square feet. He had 1,500 square feet.
So he packed it in then himself as well, did he?
Yeah, but what happened with Gareth, and nobody will ever change my mind. No, I never said anything about it. I've never told him about it. But like I said, Gareth is a very wealthy man. He works from home, computers. And he got a couple of businesses. He made businesses and sold businesses. And he's a very, very wealthy old guy. Now, he was working down there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whereas he could be in the house all that time earning just the same amount of money.
Yeah.
So it took him time to realise what he'd done. He'd taken the shop on board, which was taking his time. He was still working in the house. So that's when he put a couple in there then. He had Paul ended up going down there with him. And he took up, when I retired out of the youth after 25 years, Gareth and Paul, Paul had died to Cardiff. Well, both of them had to. They had to take tests anyway to become coaches.
Right.
So they become Worcester coaches. And Gareth and Paul managed a couple of teams. Gareth managed quite a few teams.
Right.
And Paul was the coach, like. He went to Ireland. He managed in Scotland, Menteith. They managed in Ireland, Loughtstoyle, and they went down the bottom. What's the name of the bloody reservoir? The lakes down the bottom. They're not Killarney. The last time they went down there, they were down there. So I know Paul went down the bottom end and with Gareth. I know where they went to Loughtstoyle, and I know they went to Menteith. So
was it Curran?
3 times they managed.
Was it Curran you meant? Loch Curran, was it?
Loch Curran, I think it is. Yeah. I think it's Curran.
Lovely place, that. Do you still tie flies yourself? No.
Oh no, I got enough flies. I got enough flies for me to go fishing. Look at his bloody dog. Look at his dog. He's jealous. See? One comes up and the other one wants to be on my lap as well.
No, your style. Your style of method, which it was what I was all about after I could see what you were doing. And Gwilym, when I was chatting with him, was saying the same thing. You know, the short lining, the traditional wets, and top of the water sport. Yeah,
but it wasn't just that. It was the way that you presented it.
Yeah.
It was the way you presented it. It was. When the boat is drifting, you flies are not allowed to trail beyond the boat. Got me?
Yeah.
So I could cast across the waves off the front of the boat, and as long as my flies stayed in front of the boat, I was like legal. But if your flies went behind the boat, it's illegal. Now, as soon as the flies landed on the water, I picked the rod up as high as I could. Got me?
Yeah.
And as soon as the top fly come to the surface, that fly in the breeze would spray around in a big arc.
Yeah.
That's the technique I use in the boat, other than if we are fishing the water and the fish are rising and coming up the wind. If you see them.
But usually...
If that's the case, then you've got to cast at them.
Yeah.
Now, Paul won the World Championship just by doing that. The boy in the boat would cast down the lake 20 yards. Paul would cast 22 yards. The boy would cast 25 yards. Paul would cast 28 yards. When the fish are coming up at you and you're in tournament fishing, it's the first one to get his flies in front of that fish. I've seen me taking fish on a long line. People don't realize it. I've seen me taking fish on a long line, pulling the fish from his side of the boat to me, simply by getting my flies close enough.
Yeah.
The angle of retrieving, when fish are rising and taking flies, you can get them to chase. And how many times have you been with the ospreys on the banks? You would have heard me shouting, "Here he comes."
Yeah.
I'd see a fish rise out in a lake, I'd whack my flies out at him and rip them back as fast as I could go. And I could see the bow wave that fish was making, chasing my flies so close to the surface, because I was on a floating line.
Yeah.
And I'd be whipping her back, and the fish would erupt on the end, like, and he's there.
Yeah.
And that's the same in the lake. But I'm dabbling around the corners. But as soon as fish start coming up the lake, different method, straight away. If you ever want to go and fish the banks, you don't just cast out and retrieve it. You cast out and you go down, like I just said about the boat. You're casting across the wind, or with it slightly up the wind if you can. But the best way is straight across the wind, 2 paces down, retrieve. Because the flies are coming down and across.
Yeah.
And that's what the success is. And a lot of people were casting across the wave, but they weren't going down. So the flies were coming straight across the wave.
Yeah.
Stepping 2 paces down, they're coming down on the wave.
Yeah.
That's the difference. They just didn't notice what you're doing. They're just looking at where the flies were, but they didn't notice what you're doing.
Yeah.
And don't forget, I never fished much under 11 feet.
Under
In
what?
fact, my latest rod, 11 feet.
Oh, the rod.
My rods are 11 feet. In the latter 10 or 15 years, some of the time I was fishing 12 feet. That's the maximum.
And that's obviously you'll be able to lift your line further out.
Lift it off.
And you'll be able to bob the flies for longer.
That's right. And I didn't like long bob, long leader, when you tie your fly on.
Yeah.
A lot of people would have 6 inches.
Yeah.
But it would wrap. It would wrap and it wouldn't work as good. I didn't like them too long. 3 to 4 inches was about it.
Yeah.
And my flies were never much bigger. If I had a point fly of a size 10, then my flies were all 12, 14.
Yeah. We used to fish 4 flies years ago, didn't we? And then everyone then gone to 3.
Always fished 4. Even in my latter days, I'm always fishing 4. Never changed.
Yeah.
Never changed. Unless the circumstances change and you say, "Oh, this is no bloody good today." It's a howling wind. You can't control your flies long enough to do it. What do? You try to do the same, but instead of using a floating line, you use a sinking line. So the wind can't blow it.
Yeah.
It's heavier. That way you can bob and still use it on a sinking line.
More stable.
People don't, yes. But a lot of people didn't think and realize it, see?
So it's mainly 12s, and maybe you obviously have a 10 on a point, or even a double. Do you fish doubles on a point?
Sometimes I'd have a little double on the point if the rules permitted. My point play were very, very, very often was Malin and Claret.
Is it?
And if I was on Lake Llandegvin, it would be a small silver or gold muddler, and it would be a double. But again, you got water rules to stay by. If you can only have 3 points, Chew Valley is 3 points. See? So you can have 3 singles or 1 double and a single. Chew Valley was only 3, so you had to fish for 3.
Yeah.
Loughstyle in Scotland, you could fish with bloody 6 points, 8 points. You could fish 4 flies or 4 doubles.
Can you?
In fact, one of the boys in Scotland, Harvey, his name used to be, and he used to have bloody flies all over his jumper. How he managed to put his jumper on, I don't know. His flies would be right through his jumper. Yeah, Loughstyle, and he fished it all his life, and he had this jumper full of flies, and they were all, and I mean all. I mean, how many hundred went in, I wouldn't know, but all of them were dunkels, different dressings.
Yeah.
All dunkels, that's blue gold, isn't it? You know, all dunkels. And he catch bloody fish. Yeah. Sometimes he'd be slow retrieve, sometimes he'd be super fast retrieve. But all his flies were variations of the dunkels. Never forget that when I used to say to him, "You still got blood jumping out?" Of course I still got it. He said, "That's my 30 box."
Yeah, quite a few people used to
like,
stick them. I had a jumper full of them and my hat, like you. And they'd look tatty, the flies, after a while, but they still catch. Some scruffy flies work just as good as pristine.
That's quite right. It's the fact that the fish don't get a good view of it anymore.
Yeah.
It's not straight plane.
Did you ever have the brown bowl?
No. I've got twisted out a few times. Never had the brown bowl. But not quite.
Yeah. Well, Gwilym Hughes, when I was talking to him when he had it up in Harvey, and he put it down to fair play. He said it's all down to you the way he had it. And that was his first international.
The way they had to fish was bobbing, and it was a lovely wind, lovely breeze, and the fish were coming at us like nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I told you, 4 times I had 2 fish on, and bloody 4 times I got them nothing out. And then 2 bloody fish at a time. As soon as you try to get the first one in the net, well, you couldn't do it. The first one had to come in the net, and then you're lifting the bloody net up to play the other fish. You're playing him with a net. Just about impossible, right?
So what's your...
That happened 4 times, 2 bloody fish on.
Is it?
I used to say to her, I can remember telling them, "Oh man, I'm going to try and play him out, so that they'd be so tired they can let the bloody point one first.
Yeah.
Get them both up, see?"
Yeah. What's your goals for this year now, 2021? Any fishing goals?
Well, I can't just go and being able to go anywhere yet. I think the season, don't forget our season ends in September.
Yeah.
I can't see us making this season. I don't think they'll allow us out to fish.
Well, I've heard, it's gossip again, but are they going to do an announcement tomorrow on Friday? And I've heard that the Welsh Government are going to allow people fishing and golf.
Well, there's a possibility, but we'll see.
It'd be nice if it is.
I mean, what you've got to realise, my son Paul was 39.
Yeah.
He was 39. Now, from the age of 8, he fished to get in the team. When he was 8, I mean, I'm taking him fishing, and one of the Ospreys, I never ever boated Paul only on his last trial when he was 17. I gillied him to get him into the team to fish the world. That's when I gillied him. I never ever gillied Paul because I was national coach, and it wouldn't have been fair to the other boys.
Yeah.
So I never gillied any of the trials with the kids. Never.
Yeah. I want to mention at this point now, because I was going to bring Paul into the conversation towards the end as well, because you lost him. Was it August?
Yeah, I lost Paul in August, and what you must understand, he was 39.
Yeah.
Well, go back 20 years, he was 19. Now, he wasn't driving then, but he was working with the council. And by the time he got a car, and again, his car's out of my pocket kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Paul took me fishing.
But when the Elan Valley the Welsh Bank Championships, was it you who had the most? Was it 3 times you'd won it, and then he won it more after you?
Yes. Mark Morgan won it twice. I think Aled Dixon won it twice, the same time as I had it twice. I think, not Aled, Gaza, the little one.
All right.
I think Gaza had won it twice, and I had it twice. And then I won it again, making it 3 times. So that made me technically the Welsh champion. And Paul come along, and from the age of 19 to 39, 20 years, he won it 5 times.
Wow.
Yeah, it is. I think of him every day, yeah. Every day. Like I say, when we fished together since he's 8. And the last 10 years of his life there, when he had a car, 10, 15 years perhaps, out of 20, no, it wouldn't have been that much. It would be 10 years. And when we went fishing then, Dad, I'll drive.
Yeah. And
that was him. And when we always went up to Elan, And I knew what was happening. As soon as we got to Elan Valley, Dad was going to stop by an hour breakfast.
Yeah.
He's a sod. But I'd end up paying. He's an awesome, and casty. He put a blingy fly anywhere. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant boy.
And he shared your love and passion for the wild brown trout fishing.
Every time. He loved fishing for brown trout.
Yeah.
I took him to Ireland and he thought he was in the world. He thought he was in the top place in the world on the Carib. And we drifted from Loughstyle Bay right across the green to down Goat Island, right down the other side, right across the loch. And as you go across the loch on the blow, going straight across the loch, and halfway across the loch, you start to twist, and then it goes down the loch. And as we were coming past the islands, I'd pull a couple of times on yours, so I'd get him in, into about 8 to 10 feet of water.
Yeah.
And that's where they'd be every time.
Yeah. Oh, it's a wonderful
I loved
place.
the island, and going back up, I got photos here somewhere, going back up the wind, and he's under the bloody seat and up the front of the boat laying on the floor.
Yeah.
And the bloody bow up in the air, like.
And you do get plenty of wind over there.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen boats in Ireland when we fishing. A boat 30 yards away from me, and you can't see him.
Yeah.
You don't see him. He's there, but you know he's there, but you don't see him.
Yeah.
He's up, you were down. See him on Loughstyle. Derek Thorne was on Elan with me. And there were boats 30 yards away, and you couldn't see them. That's how big the waves were.
I love those conditions. I like big weather, and I usually find that you get the better fish in them.
But let's put it this way. You hit a fish in the big wave, and before you can blink, he's under the boat and upwind.
I know.
And you're playing the fish upwind, and that's all you're doing is holding on to him.
Great, isn't it?
That's what happens. And I'm leaving. The big fish I had in leaving, boy, did they bloody go.
Yeah.
As soon as they hit them flies, you could see the fish taking the fly right up in the top of the wave.
Yeah. Yeah.
That happened on Carib as well. Big fish taking me up in the wave.
Oh, I love it. Especially May time. April, May, into June. There's a lot of fly in the water then. They're all up.
That's the main food time, see?
Yeah. And then it goes quiet.
So we used to use a detached body May. We used always, and we like a daddy long legs.
Yeah.
But we caught blood lots of fish on them.
For years we used to pull wets, and it wasn't until the dries, everyone started fishing dries, that it just turned and the success rate just upped. Then, it was such a difference.
Don't forget, my first fish ever on the fly was on a dry fly. Look, on our little pond behind the university.
Yeah, brilliant.
That you overfilled in the stream. Never forget, I used to deliberately go up there because I knew there was 2 or 3 fish in this bloody pond. Clear as a bell it used to be.
Yeah.
But you could see the buggers coming out from under the old fallen down trees in the middle.
Before we end up the chat, there's one question I ask everyone on these podcasts. Where would you want to be to make your last cast?
I know the Carib, you won't beat the Carib. You won't beat the Carib. But if anywhere, it would be the Claerwen. Brown trout wild fishing is the best of all. There is nothing to touch it. Sea trout you can't always depend on. You can go 10 times fishing for sea trout, and you might catch one on the 11th go. And you depending on the weather and conditions to bring them up from the sea. When there's brown trout in the lake, it's up to you to get them out. Well, as soon as the cork beetle's on the water, it's bananas, boy. It goes nuts.
Yeah.
Any time from May to September, right through midsummer, it's all good. It's all good as long as there's a breeze. Elan Valley is the nearest I got now to the kind of fishing that I love doing. All of them, it makes no difference. I'd rather be out in the wild, on the bank, and fish for wild browns.
Nice to speak to you, boy. And to you, I've loved chatting.
Yeah, well, when it comes to fishing, we all do, don't we?
Exactly.
Fishing is the best.
Take care, Cliff.
Same to you. Keep safe now.
And you.
Bye-bye.
Ta-ra, Cliff. If this is your first time tuning in, make sure you catch all future episodes by clicking subscribe via the links on my website, castingwithkerryjones.com or via iTunes or your favourite podcatcher. If you like what you've heard on this episode, feel free to drop me a line via my website. Tell me what you've enjoyed, ask a question, or better yet, tell me what you want to hear more of in the future. And if you're looking for additional tips, tackle reviews or venue information, or just want to see what's been hitting the back of my net lately, search up Casting with Kerry Jones on Facebook or follow me on Instagram. And if you still want more, I'm regularly uploading video content onto the Casting with Kerry Jones YouTube channel, so just check that out and subscribe over there too. Wherever you follow, subscribe, comment or message, I look forward to catching up soon for a good fishing chat. Well, I think that's all for now, so until next time, tight lines and don't strike too soon.